I ain't gonna lie. I'm about to rant the fuck out these Vince Staples albums. Yo, first ranking video of 2025, let's get it. Now, I've had the honor of listening through Vince's entire discography start to finish. You know, I can't lie to y'all, prior to this, I wasn't too familiar with his original works. Like, I've watched a bit of his show, heard many, and I mean many, of his killer top-notch features. I've seen interviews, cameo, nude pics, you name it, but nothing could have prepared me for what his work had to offer. Anyways, enough jerking around, it's time to dive in headfirst into this video. As you've come to know, there's going to be some rules. Not too much though, cause y'all know I'm not really big on them. Lord knows why. But to make sure this is a pleasurable experience for us both, I'm gonna lay a few of them out. 1, this is all just my opinion. As you all know, music is super subjective, and for my longtime viewers, probably even newer fans, y'all know I'll be wilding out with my taste. Still, I love it when you guys tell me your views, give me your rankings, and talk with me in the comments, so please feel free to share anything, whatever you want in the comments down below. Whether it be hateful, full of love, discussions on what the video is actually about, I don't care, I'm gonna heart it all. Lastly, I'm only going over his main works, you know, the stuff that I found on Spotify and Wikipedia. If I missed any other projects, please let me know. But yeah, it's time for the video.
So why would you ride a cowboy when you could ride a cowman?
Yeah, also quick disclaimer, the area I recorded this video in, you could like hear like the AC in the background. I am so sorry, please bear with it, but understand if you can't. College.
At last place, we have Prima Donna. Really cool concept, interesting execution. I really struggled in making out what this album was supposed to be. Like, right off the bat, I was getting heavy dancehall grime influences from this project, easiest to see on songs like Big Time, War Ready, and Loco. To me, it seems as if this EP served a purpose in letting Vince experiment with different sounds through the merging of different genres and musical techniques, such as chopped vocal, spastic percussions, and heavy low ends. Of course, while I admire the effort to openly experiment with new sound, this will always lead to mixed results regardless of intention. I say this all the time. Some tracks really don't hit for me, like that AutoZone car commercial ass track called Smile, the suicide-prone audio clips towards the end of each song, or the low-key snooze fest Loco was to me. However, I think that this was the intention. Again, I feel like with Prima Donna, Vince was letting us hear the new sounds he was experimenting with, using the EP as a sort of canvas for musical freedom and creativity. Strangely enough, he also sounded fully present here, a stark contrast from his usual carefree, laid-back, almost monotone vocal delivery. Vince spat his heart out, giving fascinating pieces and takes on gang culture through rapid and dense rhymes that sealed heavily in poetry. It really was different in sound and execution, and while this isn't really a favorite of mine, I can't help appreciate the creativity, especially the world he was trying to build through his audio clips and snippets later throughout. It's a fairly average body of work to me, which is why I'm feeling a light 5 out of 10. It's nothing crazy. You know, I really love the track War Ready and Prima Donna. At 7th place, we have the Big Fish Theory.
You need to leave!
Wait, don't click off, just hear me out, alright? Sonically, this album sounds more like an industrial fusion of house, techno, and probably garage. It's about 12 tracks filled with some of the most abstract pieces of sound you're gonna hear in Vince's entire discography. It's experimental, it's ambitious, it's not really my cup of tea. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, I am not too crazy about this album. It's really hard to categorize music like this, especially since it pulls from so much and really does a phenomenal job at fusing its various sounds together. From the vocal chops to the arrangement of his beats, patterns, and percussions, this album is insanely creative. And it's kind of unreal to hear Vince and his very few features somehow manage to stay on beat, if there even is a beat to be followed half of the time. Vince really strips back the layers of his music time and time again, subverting expectations on what typical music is supposed to sound like. And as much as I want to love this album for how unique and eccentric it is, how it refuses to conform not just to hip hop but to musical standards as a whole, I just couldn't bring myself to enjoy it. I just don't think I get it. There is no focus on a melody here, which rocks, right? It really feels black-centric. The lyrics are of a higher state of consciousness, there's a heavy emphasis on drums, bass, sound effects, and improv, and it hits that sweet spot of being exactly 12 tracks in runtime, wrapping itself up at 36 minutes, which is something I also really appreciate. But I just can't get with it, sonic-wise. It's one of those things where I love the concept, but just can't seem to get behind and appreciate the execution. Now, it doesn't mean I disliked everything on here. 745 is a banger. Yeah Right has been on my rotation since, and parts of the album sound fairly good overall. Alyssa's interlude was moderately enjoyable to me. Party People, another favorite of mine, has booming bass, funky percussions, and a strong message of disassociation with the cruelty of reality, as well as the temporary illusions partying and pleasures can give us. Again, there's some really solid stuff on here, but when I rank an album, as much as I can appreciate the content of its quality, replayability, and a consistent enjoyment throughout, weigh in heavily on the final decisions, which is why I'm also feeling a 5.5 out of 10 for this one. Also, Samo is hot ass. But yeah, I like the songs 745, Yeah Right, Party People, and Bag Back. Again, Samo is hot dookie water. In 6th place, we have Summertime 06. Similar to Triple X by Danny Brown, I struggled a couple of times getting through the album, but at least the end result was sort of worth it. 06 is about 20 tracks, which personally I've always felt was a bit too excessive when it comes to music. Don't get me wrong, I know LPs and EPs serve their different and individual purposes respectfully, but I've always felt like 12 to 14 tracks are just perfect when constructing an album. Not too much, not too little, just the right amount. Now, I'll have to admit, for an album with 20 songs, 06 has a runtime of about 1 hour, which isn't the worst thing in the world. I've seen albums with 16 songs run on for much longer. But looking at the rest of Vince's discography after this album, it becomes abundantly clear why he makes his bodies of work much shorter in the future to come. Which leads me to my main point. 06 has some amazing stuff on here. It starts off so strong with Lift Me Up, backed by this really grainy, guitarish, bassy type of lead, wailing synths, and this dirty, almost nasty sounding melody. The kicks are hard, the snares are snappy. Vince just flows all over this track. North North is a banger. Birds and Bees are great, but there are quite a few songs that sound a bit too similar to one another. Sure, I understand the importance of having a theme, right? But this can be explored in many different ways, i.e. Rodeo, Mr. Morale, Igor. Now, I'm trying to cut this project some slack since this is Vince's debut album, but maybe if the fat was cut off from this project, we could have gotten something more impactful and hard-hitting. I can't say memorable because this album really was filled with great songs, especially for a debut album. Vince really gives some compelling performances here. Dope Man, Senorita, 3230, and Hang and Bang all easily reminded me why Vince is so highly regarded when it comes to making experimental music. He really has a great ear for the dark space that exists within abstract sounds, but with the overabundance of songs, you're eventually bound to run into a few duds here and there, which makes itself fairly present. I'm not crazy about Loca or Surf, but I don't hate them either. I can at least admire the contents of the song without actually liking the music itself. One thing I have to admit is that his lyrical performance on here is really great in itself. Vince is an underrated lyricist in my opinion. His flow is so catchy and laid back, but his control of his cadence really puts him in a league of his own. Not only is he skillful with his delivery, but his subject matter is socially conscious, brutal, and captivating. Overall, this felt like him attempting to fully flesh out his previous project, Hell Can Wait, and while he succeeded in many areas, he clearly stumbled over some too. It's definitely above average, but not to the point where it charts around groundbreaking territory. Regardless, I'm feeling an easy 6 out of 10. Favorite songs? Lift Me Up, North North, Birds and Bees, Dope Man, Senorita, Summertime, 3230, Hang Bang, and C&B. So there's something pretty interesting I've noticed with Vince when it comes to his work. You can basically categorize his music into 2 different parts or eras. There's the pre-COVID where most of his songs were loud, heavily experimental, and grimy in terms of sound. Then there's post-COVID where he takes on a more polished and melodic approach. What am I saying? Coming in at 5th place is the Vince Staple album, the first project of the second era that I was just discussing. It was so weird hearing how drastically different Vince's sound became, because this entire album, like mentioned before, sounds so much more polished than his previous works. The only thing that stays the same is Vince's love of heavy bass and low kicks. The subject matter on here is much more reminiscent of Vince's past and upbringing. It's as if he relives his tracks through audio clips and the ad-libs of the track itself. And as you figured by now, this is a continuation of Vince being a master world builder through his songs. It's as if he allows us to dive deep into his mind and explore with him the events and places that made him who he is today. But of course, with such deep reflection, we eventually stumble through his regrets and sorrows. Now, Vince's subject matter post-COVID was always dark and socially conscious, but here it's dark in a more personal and emotional way. Even the starter track, Are You With That, which is my favorite song for him personally, harbors some really dark and depressing lyrics. I always trace back to the second verse of that song. Let me play for y'all real quick.
Whenever I miss those days, visit my cribs that lay under the ground, running around. We was them kids that played all in the street, following leads and niggas who lost their ways. Some of them outside still, some of them inside graves.
Along with the subject matter, the sounds of this album really complemented the new approach. With this album, pitch was played with a lot, creating this very murky sort of atmospheric texture. The use of soul samples and the soaking of vocals and reverb created this spacey, sort of really unique vibe. And of course, the loud bass kicks playing in the background really helped bring that hip-hop flair to the entire thing. My only qualm is that the songs sounded really similar to one another. The format wasn't played with or experimented with as much as I'd like, and of course this could lead to the album sounding a bit bland at times. However, the short runtime definitely made up for it. Regardless, I really like this album and I'm feeling a comfortable 7 out of 10 with this one. Favorite tracks are You With That, Taking Trips, The Apple in the Tree, Take Me Home, Lil Fade, and Lakewood Mall.
At
4th place we have the EP Hell Can Wait. From the get-go, I really appreciate how intense the energy off this tape was. With only 7 songs, this project was filled with turmoil and action from the start, with the beginning track Fire perfectly setting things off. The best way I can summarize this project is by describing it as the sounds of an inner city. Now, each inner city is different, and depending on geography, demographics, and history, it can alter. That's why when you listen to a lot of 90s hip-hop, the sounds of Compton and, the West Coast and Long Beach sound so drastically different to the sounds of boom bap, Mobb Deep, Nas, Wu-Tang, etc. Region plays a huge role. But Hell Can Wait sounds like what I imagine LA, more specifically Long Beach, to be, based off my biases, knowledges, and assumptions of the city's history, as well as the image the artist who comes from there often portray. Sound dynamics aside, this is also one of Vince's rawest performances, which is telling given how early in his career he was when this released. The lyrical content here was filled with cynicism, resilience, a deep relentlessness found on classic tapes such as the infamous Ready to Die, hell, maybe even Damn. Vince even had a plethora of great liners, that bar from Hands Up being a great example, and his natural gravitation towards these weird and eccentric sounds really gives this album texture. My mind pulls to the siren wails of Blue Suede or the sad and vintage jazzy clip found towards the end of 6500. My only personal qualm with this album is how it begins to lose momentum towards the end of its run. I'm not too crazy about the more melodic and R&B influenced tracks like Limos or Feeling the Love, but even then you can hear the heart of heavy experimentation in those songs, and it's far from enough to drag down the EP as a whole. Great listen to, it gets my dick hard, does its job, short, sweet, and straight to the point, and I might have to say it was a great introduction to who Vince was as well as who he become. I'm feeling a nice 7 out of 10 for this one. The songs I loved were Fire, 6500, Hands Up, and Blue Suede. Time for the intermission.
You can come right through, it's good vibes, yo. Mess up your ass, he's small time, though. Spin right through, yeah, we got springs, bro. Club on fire, we got 5 O's. Got them drinks, you can go Hulu. Got that hand and that was spray, bro. Come right through for the good vibes, though. Pull my shit when I hit this.
Alright, time for the final big 3. Let's get into this. Coming in with bronze at 3rd place we have Dark Times, and I am torn about where to put this one. No trap hi-hats, nothing. Just drums, bass, snappy snares, and those dreamy pitched out samples. Thank you. Dark Times is some of my favorite Vince songs. The run from Black and Blue to Liars is top notch. The interludes are beautiful, and the messages are distant and heartful. And when this album starts to grow stale, songs like Justin, Free Man, and Nothing Matters attempts to switch things up. It's one of his most introspective and dark sounding works, which turns themes of nostalgia and relationships into social commentary. I wish I had more to give you, but as things are, I'll just comfortably slip it in third place with the score of a 7.5 out of 10. It's his most melodic work yet. It's his most polished sounding work. It shows how insanely and how incredibly far he's come, but there's just something about it that I just don't have the knowledge or the skill yet to really discuss. But it's something that I would recommend for new time fans if you want to listen to Vince's work versus everything else, and the replayability is just top notch. Like, I cannot stop playing the songs off this project over and over again. It's a good album, but there really isn't enough there for me to kind of dive into that he really hasn't done before. So favorite songs are Black and Blue, Government Cheese, Children's Song, Shame on the Devil, Tufe? I don't know. Radio, Little Homies, and Nothing Matters.
Stay low, I can't let the grades grow. Just another day closer to my demise. Keep that
In second place, we have the banger Ramona Park Broke My Heart. I am also super conflicted with this album as well as this placement, so let me start with the positives first. So you remember how I mentioned earlier that there are basically two different eras when it comes to Vince's work? Well, Ramona seems to run with this even further, giving us this glossy, polished, atmospheric project full of reverb, R&B, and this beautiful, completely gorgeous spacey texture. Seriously, like, the sound of this album is insanely beautiful. Hell, just try to imagine listening to this album without Vince rapping on it. I swear, it's like listening to a modern R&B project. I hear the Tory Lanez, the Chris Browns, and the Summer Walkers all over this one. There's this really ingenious fusion of the regional West Coast sound into this mix, with references to West Coast figures, the sampling of DJ Quick on one track, DJ Mustard handling some production, as well as a slow and groovy, sort of funky feel the West Coast has always been known for. Tons of references to gang culture. Come on, it's a West Coast project. It comes across as Vince taking a deep pride in where he comes from, which, if you listen to his work, it's a pretty common theme. It doesn't mean he doesn't criticize aspects of gang culture, but he already has a shit ton of projects with them doing so I don't think it really matters here. Again, Vince is masterful at building worlds through his music, with the common use of the sounds and waves of the ocean, and since I'm pretty sure he's from Long Beach, California, it all checks out. More than half of this album, I was really floored with how dreamy the production sounded, but oh my god. Like, I understand having a theme, right? You know, having a certain sound and making sure your entire project matches said theme. Artists like Tyler, Kendrick, and Kanye are masterclasses when it comes to this. But unlike those artists, Vince does not, and I mean, he doesn't explore the sonic themes of his album at all. It's like listening to modern Drake. It's the same songs, same formats, just played over and over. Like, there was a short time, like a short span, where I fucking clocked out and came back to form around like Rose Street, like the second to last song of this album. Like, let me use Tyler as an example. Look at Flower Boy, right? Sonic wise, his main theme was those major seventh chords, chill, just absolutely beautiful jazzy styled music. It's all chords, but in order to bring out those chords, he'd have multiple songs where he'd touch on different genres, right? So some songs were heavy jazz influence, others neo soul, some more poppy, others that hardcore club type of hip hop. But at the end of the day, if you listened closely and paid attention, his chords were all there. He just used the different genres to explore the theme of chords and bring depth and give variety to the sound while still trying to stay close to that theme. Vince does the exact opposite of that. And don't get me wrong, if you're someone who loves the sound and is okay with listening to 16 tracks of the same sound over and over again, then I truly applaud you. Music is subjective, right? Personally, that isn't for me. Still, it doesn't take away from how beautiful and downright amazing these songs were, right? I really enjoyed this album, and if it did much more sound-wise, this would have been so much higher for me. But it still hits that itch, like it still gets that itch, and it hits me in all the right areas. So I'm feeling a 7.5 out of 10 with this one. My favorite tracks are The Beach, A, Free the Homies, Magic, When Sparks Fly, Paper Cuts, Lemonade, Spirits of Monster Cody, and of course, Rose Street. Great project. I really love this one. I would recommend it to just about anyone. the first 10 tracks. Finally, in first fucking place, we have FM. Yo, I'm scared as fuck to review this one because I feel like the entire message of this album was specifically aimed at niggas like me. Like, this entire album, front to back, was full of bangers, just club hard hits. Boom, boom, boom. This shit we grew up listening to on the radio. This whole radio station idea was fucking genius. Like, visiting Vince's discography really revealed to me how much of a creative this guy is. When people are discussing the Gambinos, the Tylers, Earls, and JPEGs, I need to see my nigga Vince in these conversations because he seriously feels so underrated. I'm guessing the whole premise of FM is like a commentary on radio stations, specifically those targeted towards black audiences who play black music. And just like I mentioned earlier, the songs chosen on here sound just like the shit you'd hear in the 2010s. Just southern influenced trap bangers. Of course, it has a slight coastal difference in sound due to Vince being a West Coast artist based in Cali, but still, the point really drove itself home. I feel like this album was also a commentary on the modern music of that time, and if you listen to Vince's discography, a lot of the music he played here sounded like he was low-key mocking, or maybe just making an example of how different hip-hop was in the mid to late 2010s. I don't know. Regardless of that, almost all the tracks hit on here, and I think a huge factor for that was the atmosphere. Just from the title track Feel Like Summer, I was mentally transported back to my high school years, riding around in my mom's car with the radio on, unconsciously listening to the station set the scene and theme of what we'd be hearing. Whether it's the house/techno music on Big Fish or the foreign influenced sound that drove Prima Donna, Vince is so good at recreating worlds through his music. It's a serious talent of his, regardless how you may feel of his work, and it still allows some form of immersion to happen. Feels Like Summer is a banger, Relay is hard as fuck, I Adore Run the Bands, Tweaking and Fun, and of course we can't forget that brand new Tyga. I really loved everything on here. Vince's pull towards the more gangster, hardcore subject matter really drove in the commentary on the music we're subconsciously letting into our psyches, and the short runtime was really the icing on the cake. It's an amazing project. I'm feeling an easy 8 out of 10 with this one. Definitely will come back to this later. I love it. I recommend this to anybody, hip hop fan or not. This shit is full of bangers. It's hard. So yeah, that's the video. I am so sorry about the air conditioning thing, like the hum in the background. Super apologize for it, but this is the only room I can record these videos at for right now. Finishing my last year of college, but it's almost done, boys. I'm gonna graduate soon. Really hope you enjoyed the video. Regardless of whatever you think, please share it down in the comments below. I am excited to heart and read and interact with everything y'all say. Working on that Devon Hendrix video. I will be, well, I'm not gonna spoil it. I'm just gonna give y'all a little surprise. But yeah, thanks for watching. Love y'all guys. I will see y'all in the next one.
I'm over here stroking my dick. I got lotion on my dick right now. I'm just stroking my shit. I'm horny as fuck.